as stated by our opponent, they believe zoos should be banned and that natural reserves should be put in place because his main points were that they harm the animal, they're not educational, and we don't have safety measures that are good enough. I wanted to start off with talking about why zoos are actually safer for the animals. Out in the wild, as of 2015, the National Wildlife Federation states that a list of 6+ diseases have been ruled as threatening to our natural wildlife, meaning they're endangering and possibly extinction for a few. A certain type of fungus, citrid, is a fungus that grows on the skins of amphibians, disturbing their breathing and ability to take water through their skin. This disease has spread across the globe, infecting and decimating the frog population. White nose syndrome has killed hundreds and thousands of bats in the northeast and Atlantic states. And I'll leave you with one more. The sylvatic plague kills prairie dogs by way of fleas, and then once black-footed ferrets eat those prairie dogs, they are also put into risk and face endangerment. These diseases spread because of uncontrolled environments. Therefore, that's why it makes more sense to keep certain animals in controlled environments. Now, I'm not saying we need to take every single animal we see in the wild and put them in a zoo, because that's not what they're for. Zoos are specifically to conserve animals, to prevent them from going extinct. So that outweighs the cons of their harms, because without zoos, animals such as the Guam rails, the black-footed ferrets, California condors, a type of snail, and a macaw, they would all be extinct if it wasn't for captivity within reason. When it comes to educational purposes, he mentioned that more people do not learn from when they go to that more people don't learn when they go to the zoos, but rather there was a study actually done by a man who's an anthropologist and a science teacher at Colorado State, Mark said he did a study on biodiversity, and after a tour at the London Zoo, the same zoo that he mentioned, 10% of people reported that they understood animals more, that they liked the biodiversity in the zoos, and only 2% said that they didn't agree with how they were shown. So the pros in that outweigh the cons of the educational. Also, when it comes to education, Clear Learning, which is a resource journal, has written an article by Rex, and he states that he actually was against zoos and aquarium, but he changed his mind once he actually did non-biased research. And from that, he explains how the real animals can connect to the real world. These kids are placed behind a screen all the time. You know, they need to be able to go outside of the four walls and to learn more about the animals. And there's no better education than seeing it up close and personal. Yes, you're going to have those kids who don't take a lot away from it, but you're also going to have the kids who really, you know, are inspired by it and who want to become zookeepers and natural conservationists. So it would be unfair just to completely ban education at the zoo. Now, when it comes to safety, he mentioned that you could just pick up an animal, take it home, put it in your backyard, and call it a zoo. That is incorrect. Every one of these zoos goes through health standards, inspection, and certification. A couple of these, not to mention more, would be animal welfare compliance, the AAA LAC International Accreditation, the AZA, and the ZAA accreditation, and that's just to name a few. There was actually 8 more that they need to go through. And this doesn't include weekly inspections by undercover inspectors to make sure that they're being fed properly, they actually take their weight, they go with them to the vet. So to say that these animals are neglected and not taken care of properly is foolish, because they spend so much time and effort saving and conserving these animals. Why would they harm them in the first place? And how he mentioned that when there was a flood, all these animals escaped. That's why actually more safety measures have been put into effect. As of 2014, nationally 300 zoos have undergone reconstruction for safety measures, making enclosures larger for animals and also making better safety escapes. And also they route to, if a natural disaster occurred, if animals came out, they now tranquilize rather than kill the animal, because it's just overall better for the public, it doesn't traumatize anyone, and it doesn't kill the animal. It's more humane. Also, when he mentioned how police, are taking selfies with animals, the thing is, you have good people and bad people everywhere, good cops and bad cops. So don't let that few bad cops interfere with the people who are really worried about our animals. lastly hit on why natural reserves are not a good alternative. Many of the natural reserves for wild animals are far off in other countries. You hear of the elephants, the lions, the tigers, those are all in Africa. So it's very hard for you guys and me to just jet off into a plane and go to Africa to observe an animal. It's not the most realistic way. Also, once animals are placed into a natural reserve, they are more on their own. This means that these animals who have been born and raised, hand-fed, and taken care of for their medical needs are going to be thrown and not know what to do because their natural instincts are, to rely on a zookeeper. And that's fine because that's what they're bred to do. They were not abducted from the natural forest. None of that happened. And so these animals will just be left to fend and feed for themselves when they are not prepared for that. And so that's more inhumane than it is to keep an animal safe by feeding them and taking care of them. And lastly, with natural reserves being bigger and everything, we can meet in the middle because Minnesota zoos are doing just that. They're increasing their enclosure size, making pathways for animals to cross like structures instead of just staying in their little area or corner. They're now able to move around and roam because that's what animals are meant to do. With space being increased for animals to feel more at home, zoos protect animals from diseases, poaching, extinction, and are educational. Therefore, it would be unwise to eliminate zoos. Thank you.